What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at the match between Manchester City and Arsenal and how right away Man City took back control over the Premier League title race in the first 2 minutes. Now, I'm making this video using Live Tag Pro, and before we get into the tactics behind both teams and the match and how the match was shaped up by the tactical approach from these two Premier League sides, check out Live Tag Pro and check out both my books as well as my new tactics course, all in the description below. Links to all that can be found in the description. Now let's get right in the video. I pre-recorded the segment, so I'm using just QuickTime Player to make this video as well as Live Tag Pro to try and get things running a little bit more smoothly. So right away we'll see Arsenal play in a very man-oriented fashion. The wide players are crucially oriented towards the wide fullbacks of Manchester City, and the overload happens between central defenders. Ruben Diaz was the free player in build-up. Gabriel Jesus was very oriented towards John Stones and Man City's back four. So what would happen was the three midfielders would match up against the three midfielders from Arsenal with Arsenal's man-oriented approach out of possession of the ball. So we would have a double pivot, and because of the single 10 from Arsenal, Martin Odegaard, he would be responsible for pressing Gundogan and the central defender, Ruben Diaz, the free player, but also being tasked with controlling Rodri, who at times would entice Xhaka to jump, and vice versa. If Odegaard matched up with Rodri, Partey would jump, but this all dictated Kevin De Bruyne's movement, as we'll see in the next clip. With the man orientation, we also have opportunities. So at the base, because of the reference Gabriel Jesus takes with John Stones, the right central defender, we have a numerical advantage between Martin Odegaard and the two holding midfielders, as well as the free central defender. So if not a 3 versus 1, we would at least have a 2 versus 1 between Gundogan and Ruben Diaz. The wide players would be oriented out wide, isolating this three-man structure between these three players, and Kevin De Bruyne's role would now start to take shape. When there were two holding midfielders, he would look to play between them and pin them to emphasize the numerical advantage on these players. So when the first progression happened past the initial press of Arsenal, Kevin De Bruyne could then be in a position to do blindside movements and exploit the shadow and orientation of the two Arsenal holding midfielders. Now when this wasn't the case, and Xhaka now jumps using his cover shadow to try and control the space he left, this is the cue for Kevin De Bruyne to exploit his cover shadow, because the further you go away from player, the less influence their cover shadow has. So because Xhaka jumps, there's a separation in the midfield. Now Kevin De Bruyne will be cued to go into the cover shadow. So this can then potentially create a diagonal pass straight to Kevin De Bruyne, but more importantly, as Kevin De Bruyne moves here, Thomas Partey will be in a decision. If Thomas Partey comes, we can look and exploit to 2 versus 1 against Martin Odegaard and progress the ball in the half space. If Thomas Partey stays, we can exploit the 2 versus 1 and find a diagonal pass into Kevin De Bruyne on this right hand side, looking in to partner with Erling Haaland. So now as we look at the next picture, we'll see the 2 versus 1, the isolated players, and we could even isolate Gabriel Jesus because of his orientation. John Stones, Xhaka jumps to Rodri, Saka's pinned out wide, and Martinelli's pinned out wide as well. So then, with the players playing off the shoulder of Thomas Partey, he can then fan out into these central spaces and further exploit the numerical advantage that starts with Martin Odegaard and Ruben Diaz. This was the trend throughout most of the match. And when the ball travels, there's a few different movements. Not only could Kevin De Bruyne exploit the cover shadow, but he could also go higher up and exploit the blind spot of Thomas Partey, going through the player's shadow and arriving in the weak side half space. Now, as we look at the danger zone they arrive in, so Gundogan has carried the ball now into the final third, and it's important that we note the progression takes place through the half space, because now we have direct access to these assist zones with players like Gundogan making late runs, arriving in these areas, or pushing back the defenders to create space for the free-flowing Kevin De Bruyne to get on his left foot and whip balls in to Erling Haaland and Bernardo Silva at the back post. Now as we look, we'll see the setup of Manchester City being very controlled in these positions with a three-man rest defense at the top of the box for second balls and quickly able to counter-press, with the players playing on the outside shoulder of the defenders in their blind spots, ready to attack and create goal scoring chances, get on the end of crosses delivered by Kevin De Bruyne. So this setup and these tactical concepts were so clear throughout most of the match. If you have the chance, go back and rewatch the match. You'll see it right away from the first minute, and this is how Man City dominated the match in all phases. It started with their in possession offensive organization that completely killed the Arsenal momentum that they were able to establish and gave Man City control over the title race now. So if you liked the video, let me know in the comments below what you think of it, and I'll see you in the next one.